All right, so it is Sunday, May 29th, 2016. I don't know how it's late May already, and we are here with Ed Snavely. Am I saying that right? Okay. And tell me the name of your farm.
Curlytail Organic Farm,
All right, and we are here in Fredericktown,
north of Fredericktown.
north of Fredericktown, in Knox County still?
Hmm.
All right, and I'm Jess Lamar Reece Holler, and this is our third interview in a series for what we're calling the OFA Food Farm and Movement Memory Project. We're investigating the history and rise of ecological agriculture in Ohio and talking with some of the pioneers of the movement and folks who were really involved in the early days of OFA, the Ohio Ecological Food and Farm Association, as well. So to start us off, Ed, can you just say and spell your full name for the record?
Snavely.
Perfect. So Ed, to just start us off, can you just tell me a little bit about where and when you were born?
July 5th, 1954. I was born in Mansfield, Ohio.
And what was early life like for you?
Grew up on a farm, had two sisters. My dad worked in a factory in Mansfield. A lot of lean times. He was laid off a lot. So it was, we didn't have a lot, but we survived.
So your dad worked in the factory and had the farm.
Hmm.
What kind of factory did he work in?
He worked at Westinghouse.
What did he do?
They made laundromats and stoves and washing machines. And
Why did he keep the farm?
he grew up on a farm, and that's what he liked. So they owned a small farm up by Johnsville, and then they bought the farm that I grew up on here, which is about a half a mile from where I live right now. And like I said, he grew up on a farm, and he actually was going to take over his father's farm, but then he got drafted into the service, and then that fell through. So when he got out of the service, they bought this small farm up by Johnsville, which was before me, and then they bought where I grew up just before I was born, and then I grew up on that farm.
Can you show me what it was like on that farm? What did it look like? What did you guys grow growing up?
He had a few milk cows, and he raised pigs. He didn't milk. I don't remember the milk cows, but the only thing I remember from a milk cows, we had a family cow for our own milk, but other than that, he raised pigs, and then he raised the feed that he needed to feed them. He raised corn, beans, and oats, and a little bit of hay.
What was it like for you growing up there?
I loved it. I mean, it was out in the country, and I had, when I got older, I had my friends, and we'd either be at my place, we'd be at their place. Our parents always knew where we were, because we was at my place, my friend's place, and our parents didn't have to worry about us. It was, we just had a good time.
Now, what sort of practices did your parents use on the farm back then?
My dad, well, like I said, he raised corn. Later, he had beans in the rotation, but mainly corn, oats, and hay. And we cultivated. He used a little bit of fertilizer, but hardly any ever spray until later. I'm going to say maybe in the mid '60s, he started spraying. But we still cultivated. I mean, he didn't use spray heavy.
And growing up, did you think you'd go into agriculture yourself?
Nope, had no desire to.
So what were your school days like? What happened?
Well, I went to Fredericktown to school, and I was always intrigued with pounding nails. My mom, the first nails I pounded in the back porch floor, she never took them out because I don't know. She thought that was something cool that the first nail I ever drove was in the porch of the back. We had a back porch that had the freezer and stuff on it, but she kept that. But that was my life goal through school and high school, was to become a carpenter. And
was there anyone in your family who was mentoring you in that?
No, it was just something I wanted to do. And how I came up with that, I have no idea. But when I graduated, my mother wanted me to go to college, so I went for a semester, and that wasn't for me. And I came home, and I got a job with a construction company, but it was in January, which was a bad time of the year, and that lasted 6 weeks. And I said, "This is enough of that." It turned me against it because it was the wrong time of the year to get started, and the guy I went to work for, he was totally different than what I thought it would be, and so I got a job then at a factory in Mount Vernon where we made windows. So that was kind of made windows, so it was kind of in the construction business. I mean, it was used there, and it was during that time that my dad had a stroke, and it was in the fall of the year, so I had to get the crops off for him, and I've been farming ever since.
What was that like, having to go to work on your family farm after saying early on that you didn't want to do it?
Well, I would help, but that was not my desire to farm, just because of the simple reason that, there's not a lot. I mean, it's a hard life, and I just, it wasn't something that I wanted. But once I had that responsibility of getting his crops, and my dad didn't farm a lot. I mean, he farmed about 100 acres, but I don't know. It was just something about after having that responsibility of getting it off that, I decided I'd like to do that. So since I didn't go back to college, he came out of his stroke, and so they'd put my two sisters through college. So he bought my first tractor for me, and between him and I and them in the early 70s, we got up to the point where we was conventionally farming about 600 acres.
And so you shared the land.
We rented. He had 63 acres where we lived, and then the rest was done either rented or on the what they called then sharecropping, which is we got half, and the person got half whose land it was.
Did you enjoy that?
Yes, that's why I'm still doing it today.
So
once it got, I don't know, and I'm just going to say, once it got in my blood, I just couldn't get, so to speak. I mean, that's not what happened, but I mean, that's just, I enjoyed doing it. I enjoyed being out in the, fresh air. But we weren't big enough where I could, do that full time. So, like I said, I'd gotten a job at this place in Mount Vernon that built windows, and I worked there about a year, and then I got into another factory which is in Mansfield. It's called Gorman-Rupp, which build pumps, and I will have been there 43 years in October.
So you intended to always kind of do that alongside?
Well, I mean, yeah, of course my goal was to farm full time, but it's hard to farm full time. Even today, it's a lot of the guys that farm full time, their wives are working somewhere else, or it's a hard life.
But you do it because you enjoy it.
I enjoy it.
So I have to ask you. So you said this was in the 70s?
Yes.
What else was going on for you at the time in the 70s? What were kind of the networks and worlds you were plugged into?
As far as
just anything, socially, culturally. What were you up to besides working and farming?
Well, I'd go to work, I'd come home and farm. And like I said, at that time I wasn't married. I mean, there was a group of us guys that that grew up together, that we ran around, and we just did our normal thing of whatever, run it, when I wasn't busy, we'd just hang out together.
Now I want to ask, since you're wearing the hat that says something about organic seeds, so you mentioned that when you and your dad were doing this business, and when you would come back to work with him, you were farming conventionally, chemically.
Correct.
What changed that for you?
I would say it was in the late 70s. We were first introduced to organic farming through a company called AgriStore.
And this is like a supplier?
It was. They were promoting a bacterial product. Now, they had other products too, but there was a neighbor that had used it, and actually, we had talked earlier about some of the earlier pioneers of of OFA, and the name Rex Spray came up. And Rex probably was the initiator of that. It actually even goes back to a company. I never worked with this company. It was called Wonder Life, but the people that was in Wonder Life started AgriStore, and it was a bacterial product that had 36 different strands of bacteria in it. But anyways, they introduced this through what they called dinner parties. And there was a neighbor that was farming organically. Of course, there wasn't no certification at that time. And he had invited myself and my dad and our spouses to it, and we went to this dinner, and they give us a free lunch, a free dinner, and then they talked about life in the soil and different aspects of organic farming, and they really didn't push their product at that meeting, but they handed cards out, and if you wanted, if you were interested more, then they would come talk to you more one-on-one, because it is farm specific. I mean, you can talk generally, but to get into the nuts and bolts of it, each individual farm is different. Well, I tried to get my dad to do that, and of course, when I did start farming, then I had actually, I didn't have any agricultural school, background as far as college or anything like that. But like I said, he cultivated. As a kid growing up, that was my summers, sitting on a tractor, 2-row cultivator, cultivating corn and soybeans all summer long. But so when I started, I says, Dad, we need to do this, we need to do that. We started using more chemicals. He was putting 300 pounds of fertilizer on with the corn planter on corn, and that was it, and cultivating. I says, Dad, we need to do more. So we was using more fertilizer, we was using more chemicals, and then, like I said, we got introduced to this, and of course he kind of grew up not knowing farming, more naturally, but he's seen the ease of it, of not as much labor in it, and of course then I couldn't get him to go back, so we continued farming conventionally, and it wasn't until after my father passed away I could see things just weren't right with the soil. We was having trouble, and so in '86 is when we quit using chemicals cold turkey, and have been organic since.
Was it just about the soil? Was there anything about like your own health or concerns that went into it?
I could tell that when I was mixing the chemicals for spraying, I didn't. It made me feel different, but you could just see the soil. Every year it was taking something different or something more. It was just a constant battle. And I knew then something had to be changed, and so my wife and I, we decided that, and by that time there was another neighbor that was using this product, and so he brought the representative, and we sat down around the table, and we devised a farm plan of what we were going to do, and so
You were all big grain at the time, kind of grain, soy.
No, I had hogs. We had 40 sows, farrow to finish, confinement. So we was all the grain that we raised was going back into the feed, and
so you didn't sell any grain off farm?
Well, some, because my dad and I, we were farming 600 acres together. Mm-hmm. So we had about 100 acres. 150 acres of corn, 150 acres of beans, 150 acres of wheat and oats, so we weren't feeding it all, but we were feeding a lot of it, and the rest of it we was selling. Sold a lot of corn for under $1 a bushel back then in the late 70s, early 80s.
And so, at the time when you made that transition to organic, were you still farming with your dad, or that was after he passed?
No, that was after he passed.
And were you over here at this farm?
Yes, we bought this farm in 1979.
And farmed it conventionally?
Mm-hmm. And we'd actually farmed it before that. The people that we bought the farm, the older couple that we bought the farm from, we farmed it on the shares with them. Uh, Part of it, I mean, he did part of it himself. We did the rest of it on the share. And every year, I mean, as Glenn got older, I mean, he kept turning more and more over it. And by the time, I think the last 3 years that we farmed this farm, we was farming it all on, I mean, on the shares, which basically, you know, he furnished the land, he paid for half the seed to fertilizer, we paid for the other half, and then, you know, half the crop was mine, half the crop was his.
How would you describe this land here? What's the soil like? What's this piece of
It's a
property?
clay loam. It's pretty productive. I mean, there's some places that probably could use some tile yet, but for the most part, it lays pretty good and drains pretty good.
So what was the climate like when you decided to transition to organic? Was there a lot of support for that, or a lot of knowledge?
There was none whatsoever. I mean, there was a few people. Like I said, there was the neighbor.
What was their name?
His name was Stanley Gregg. There was Rex. I mean,
Rick Spray.
Right. And as you talk, I mean, as you talk to, as far as the grain people go, his name will come up quite often. I mean, he was really one of the first pioneers there in Ohio. So I mean, there was a lot of support there. But as far as the neighbors and stuff, the U was pretty much ridiculed.
Why?
Well, they didn't think it could be done. They thought you were crazy. I know the place where I bought my lot of my seed and my chemicals, because we still had some rented ground that the renters didn't want to go that direction, so we had to keep that conventional. And when he found out that I was going organic with everything, I was put on a cash only basis and was told that I will own your farm someday because you ain't going to make it. Well, I'm still on the farm, and the fertilizer place is history. It's no longer around. So, but not me. I mean, it's just because of way things have changed, as far as I'm sure in the conventional world, things being bought. I mean, however, I mean, it's just, you know, they in them early years, they didn't think it could be done.
What appealed to you about trying out something when so many people were so skeptical?
Well,
Why
I
did
mean,
that?
it's just, you know, I just seen that something needed to be done, and you know, I mean, I was willing to try it. I mean, I'd seen what Rex had done. I'd seen what some other people had, you know, Stanley had done, and you know, I knew it could be done. When I first started, I tried to do it on a 3-year rotation, which that was cutting it pretty close. Today we're on a 7-year rotation. I think the more diverse I get, the easier. I mean, as far as weed control and different things, the easier it is. A lot of the grain growers I know are on a 4-year rotation, which that's kind of what Rex would teach, and I know, and that farm is still on that. But for me, this 7-year rotation works out. So every year there's the farms divided into 7 12-acre groups of fields, and then there's 3 fields that lay in a wetter area that's 9 acres that's split in 3 acres that rotate in that 3-year rotation. It's just because it lays wet. But so in that 84 acres that's in that 7-year rotation, 6 years out of the 7 there's a crop growing. The 7th year it lays in rest.
And what was your rotation cycle like before organic?
Before, corn, soybeans, and wheat usually.
How many years?
3.
Okay, 3 years. Cool.
Year corn, year beans, a year of wheat. Sometimes we'd go 2 years of corn, a year of beans, and then a year of wheat.
And what does it look like now?
My rotation now, it's a year of corn, then a year of beans, a year of small grain, and then it goes back to a year of beans, back to a year of small grains, and then 2 years, a year of small grain, a year of hay.
Why that rotation?
It's just what works. with my hogs, that works for me.
And so When you switched to organic, you were doing all the grain and doing hog still. Those were the two things.
Right.
No vegetables.
No.
Okay. And so your main product then to the general public would have been pork.
Yes.
Okay. Was anyone seeking out organic pork in particular then? Was that a hard thing to market in the 80s?
Actually, how that all got started was there was a man, a young fellow by the name of Bob Flannery. I met him at an OFA conference, and we also raised chickens back then. My parents had raised chickens, and then actually after my dad died, my wife and I we'd raised about 1,000 birds a year, which we sold it mainly to family members. My mom's side of the family, there was 8 brothers and sisters, so we'd raise the chickens, and then usually 2 or 3 Saturdays we had a chicken processing day, and we'd get up, we'd take the chickens and get them killed, and then we'd bring them back to my mom's place and cart it all down the basement, and we'd have a cutting up party, and and so most of that got sold, like I said, to my aunts and uncles. And I was at an OFA conference, and Bob had heard that we raised chickens, and we're feeding them. I mean, they weren't certified or anything, but we're feeding them organic feed. And he came up and wondered about getting organic chicken, and I said, well, we really don't have any. And at that time, I was just about to get out of the pig business because hogs hit 8 cents. I was feeding them organic grain, and it just didn't make sense.
Were you marketing the hogs as organic?
No, they like I said, I had 40 sows feral to finish. They were all being sold through producers, and hogs hit 8 cents, and I was feeding 8-cent hogs. I was feeding them at that time $6 corn, organic corn, and it just didn't make sense. So I started to phase out of it, and then that, like I said, Bob was wanting chicken, but I mean I didn't have chicken because we just was raising it for family members. And I said, I do have a few pigs, and so that's how the organic pork got started, which that would have been in the probably 91, 92. And
was Bob someone who was reselling at other places?
yeah, he was buying it and then reselling it. So I sold him a couple pigs, and then that turned into, Bob had it for a year or so, and then somebody else bought it out. It was called Ohio Farm Direct, and they were actually buying whole pigs then, and then they were having it processed to however point they were, and then I'm going to say it was the mid '90s when we started process when that we were still and Ohio Farm Direct got sold again, and things that slowed down, and so that's when my wife and we started doing the farmers markets. And so now probably 90% of what we raise goes through the 2 farmers markets, and the rest is sold halves and wholes.
So what 2 farmers markets are you
We
in
do
now?
the Worthington's Farmer Market, and we do the Cuyahoga Valley Farmers Market, which is up by Akron.
Say that's far north. So when you started out, what was your market?
We did the Worthington Market. I did that on Saturday, and we were approached, and I can't even tell you who this person was now, to do it was a Thursday night market in Coventry Heights, which is a suburb of Cleveland. So every Thursday evening I'd drive to Cleveland and sell up there.
What were the farmers markets like? This was the early 90s? Is that when you started?
Mid 90s.
Mid 90s. Yeah, what was it like then?
Well, the Worthington Market, it's probably, I'm going to say it's the best market in the Ohio. I mean, you hear that a lot. Of course, I don't, there's other markets, but I mean, I've always done good at the Worthington's Market. We did good at that Coventry Market for a while, and then it started and then it got to the point where it wasn't worth my trip clear to Cleveland, which 2.5 hours. So we dropped that market and only did the Worthington Market for a while. And then we were approached by the the group from Cuyahoga Valley, and they were doing a midweek market, and they was doing it at the Stan Hewitt Center in Akron. So we did that market for a while, and then I don't really remember why we quit doing that. And then my wife started doing the market that they do in on the park in the valley then on Saturday mornings. So that's the two markets we do.
Now, when you first started at farmers markets, I'm curious what reactions you got from consumers about the products you were selling. Do you remember some of the things they'd come to you and say?
Well, I had went to the market with Mike Laughlin the year prior 1 week just to see what it was like, and because I'd never been to to a market, see what it was like, see what the crowd was like, and of course Mike encouraged me to do it. He says, I think you got a product that will sell at the market. I mean,
were there a lot of other organic pork producers at the time?
No. At that time, I don't know if there was. I don't even know if there was any meat at the market. I don't. I just don't remember. But I don't recall that there was any meat at the market. So I signed up for it, and I mean it was slow at the first. I mean I didn't do a lot, but it was something new, and it took time to get a clientele built up and people to trust you, and as time went on, by the word of mouth, more and more people, and now we have a very good following, and now at the market there's three other pork people selling pork, and I hear quite often if I don't happen to be at the market and someone has if they want something and they get something from someone else, they tell me that mine doesn't the other doesn't compare anywhere near to what mine is. So
why were people seeking out organic pork?
Well, I think a lot of it, I mean, especially now, I mean, in the last 10 years, 8 years, I don't know actually when it started. I mean, with all of the the talk about the confinement operations, and how them animals are treated, how them animals are fed and everything. And with the onslaught of GMOs and everything, people are concerned. They want to know where their food comes from, how it's raised, what it's fed. A lot of people. I mean, a lot of people don't care, but of course, the people promoting GMOs and everything, they say that they're okay, they're not going to hurt you, but who knows? But there's if people want to buy it and they're willing to, I'll raise it.
I wanted to ask, you'd mentioned a couple of other folks who are kind of doing this kind of stuff earlier on. Did you have a mentor or any person or set of farmers who you really learned how to do this from, in terms of how do you transition to organic and raise organic food?
Well, like I said, I'll go back to the AgriStore company. I mean, they did, and they did that dinner meeting, and then of course that was, I don't know when that was. It would have been prior to '83, because my father passed away in '83, and then we finally decided to quit using chemicals in '86. So there was at least a 4-year period in there where prior to that, but I mean that company had their representatives that was helpful. Stanley Gregg, which he was a dealer for him, so he was very helpful.
Would you go visit his farm, or would he come out and actually kind of give you advice?
Well, I mean, that first initial, I mean, we sat down and mapped the farm out and decided what fields how we was going to do it. And then, of course, like I said, Stanley's a neighbor. He just lives the next road over, so it's not like, and we weren't miles apart. And of course, Rex would have field tours. We would go to that. But I'd go to the OFA conference, and of course there would be workshops there that you would attend. So, but as far as a lot of mentoring, no, I didn't have.
How did you get involved in the OFA network?
Well, I first, like I said, I quit. We quit using chemicals in '86. Takes 3 years to go through. So I was first certified in '89, and I started. I went to conferences. Got certified through OFA. I mean, not really involved with them other than through certification. And I would attend the conference, and at that time we had any extra grain like corn or soybeans. Uh, there was we was marketing them through Rex, and he had a buyer in It was a chicken farm in Massachusetts that was buying the grain. And in '95, Rex, there was two or three of us around here that was taking our grain to Rex, and it was getting shipped there. That Rex, the buyer, the guy that was buying the grain in Massachusetts, told him that we was going to need a different certification because OFA wasn't going to work. And of course, this was pre USDA, before the NOP came into effect. So there was a group of OFA growers that was already getting duly certified with another certifier called OCI, which is the Organic Crop Improvement Association, which at one time their headquarters was in Bellefontaine, but they had moved to Lincoln, Nebraska. So, but anyways, they were recognized internationally, and I think the reason why we was needing that is I think maybe some of this chicken was getting shipped overseas, and they needed OFA certification wasn't recognized outside of the state.
Because at the time there was kind of a patchwork of state and local level certifications.
Right. There was hopscotch different certifications around, and most of OFA stuff was that was certified by OFA was vegetables and of course at that time there wasn't much demand for livestock, because there just wasn't much organic livestock at that point here in the state. So anyways, we needed that OCI certification. So I first got my OCI certification in '95, and so we was duly certified, and there was a chapter of growers that was both OFA and OCI certified, and they met through the winter months once a month. So I started going to those meetings.
Is that the same as the grain growers?
It is. It's that group now, but back then it was called the OFA OCI Ohio chapter. And in '96 there was, and I'm going to say at that time there was probably I'm going to say around 50 members, 50 farmers from all over the state. And like I said, we met once a month through the winter months and had a meeting, which part of that was required by OCIA. That was part of their bylaws that you had to have so many meetings a year. And, we not only would go to those meetings and do just normal business, but we'd have different speakers. We'd talk about different things that different people that people were doing on their farms, which that was real good because there's a lot of interaction between farmers and what they were doing from all over the state. Well, in '96 there was a group of growers in that group that decided that they no longer wanted to be affiliated with OFA, and we won't go into that. It happened, and so
this is pre-USDA national.
This is pre-US. Yes, this would have been in '96.
And that came through when? The USDA.
I'm not real sure. What was it, 2000?
I feel like 99, 2000.
It's somewhere around there.
I should know.
I don't know, but anyways, so there, like I said, there was a group that felt that they were subsidizing the vegetable growers because the fees for a vegetable grower compared to the fees for a grain grower, there was a vast, because a lot of it was based on an acreage fee. A lot of the vegetable growers, wasn't even an acre, so their fee was very minimal compared to what a 200-300 acre grain farmer was. So they decided that they wanted to split I mean, they were going to drop OFA. So there was two guys that decided they had met, which it was Rex and Jim Krogan. They had talked with each other, which they had been involved for a while, and they at one of the meetings they passed a paper around and asked if anybody would be interested in keeping the OFA OCIA chapter going. And so they passed that paper around, and I'm going to say it was probably about split equal. Maybe 25 said yes, they would like to do it, and 25 said, well, they just didn't sign it. So they Rex and Jim took that core group that said yeah they would like to keep that chapter, and out of that core group there was about 5 people that they picked that they felt could take the chapter and keep it going and be the leadership and keep the OFA OCI chapter. And I was one of the ones of the 5 or 6 that was on that. They had a meeting with us, and they asked if any of us would take that responsibility. And out of that, I can't remember the guy that one of the farmers. He lived up by Oberlin. He took the presidency. I took vice president, and I don't remember who took secretary. But there was 4 of us that took the leadership at that time. So out of that, keeping that as an OFA OCI chapter, we became Chapter 1 of Ohio of OCI and the OFA. And at that time, OFA was broke up in regions. There was the southwest, southeast, northwest, northeast, and central. So there would have been 5 regions, and the grain grower chapter, which was given a representative on the board. And so that's how I became involved with OFA. Was nobody else out of that core group wanted to do that. I said I'd be willing to do it, and so I've been on the board from the get-go. So it's 20 years now that I've been on the board.
Congratulations.
But that's how I got involved. Had it not been for that, I probably I would have stayed certified. But as far as gotten involved in some of the what I'm going to call it the mechanics of OFA, of everything, by getting on the board, then I've gotten involved.
Were there key advocacy campaigns, OFA campaigns that affected your practice as a grain grower? Things they fought for or helped you to fight for?
Well, I mean, when USDA, when the NOP come out, I mean, yes, I mean, OFA, we put comments in for what OFA wanted to see as what standards and those type of things, and there's been a lot of things that OFA, I mean, the BST with the milk, different things, so I mean, yes, I mean, OFA does a lot of of things for growers, and that's what OFA's about, is helping not only helping the farmers but helping consumers. I mean the membership, I think, is around 3,000 right now, and which comprise of farmers, backyard growers, gardeners, large vegetable growers, grain growers, dairy. I mean, of course, dairy's a big thing right now. Probably one of the fastest growing in organics is the dairy. But no, OFA was very involved in helping people, and I mean, and of course, over the years, different workshops that they do, and but like I said, if it hadn't been for that group splitting, I probably wouldn't have gotten involved the way that I've gotten. I mean, not saying that something else wouldn't have come down the pike later, but that's what happened at that time, and that's how I got involved on the board. And of course, at that time, we didn't have an executive director; we had an office manager, which was Sean. And
Sean McGovern.
and so the board in them early years, then, the board did a lot of the operation of OFA, and of course then I don't know what year it was, but Sean moved on, and so the board we had to find someone, and luckily we found Carol, and she's been a great inspiration and a great leader, and because there was at one point there was a point where I didn't know if OFA would be around because things got pretty rough there for a while. There was a lot of tension between board members.
I was going to ask about, in particular, it seems like it would be difficult to have a shared set of certification standards, for example, when what grain growers, dairy folk, and vegetable growers deal with are so different, right?
Well, and of course, once the NOP come in, the education. I mean, I sit on the education board. I can't sit on the certification board because I'm a certified grower, and a certified grower can't sit on that board. And so, but I mean, as far as you talk about different regulations between grain growers, vegetable growers. I don't know how to say this, but when it comes to the soil and all that, there's not that much difference. I mean, we all got our inputs and everything. I mean, yeah, there's some difference, but yet there's not.
Where were the tensions coming from? The tensions amongst the board.
Oh, amongst the board?
It wasn't over certification.
No, it had nothing to do with certification. There was at that time, and I'm not mentioning names because that don't matter, but I mean the board, and it still works on consensus. We don't vote. So if there was a board member that didn't agree with something, and he spoke out against it, that killed it. And so, like I said, when Sean left there, it was left with the board, and so the board was, and you had X number of board members, and we had our own farms and lives, so and positioned all over the state, which, of course, we had the president, and he was kind of the overseer of it all. And so he was trying to do the best he could, and there was a couple board members that raised a lot of flack and just wouldn't go along, and so it just kind of brought things to starting, just a standstill, and it was just hard to get some things done, and in the midst of it there was hard feelings, and I don't know. I'm going to say this. I don't know that this needs to be public knowledge, but.
Do you want me to pause it, or?
Well, I mean, you can have it in there, but just I don't know that you want to put that in as public knowledge. But I mean, OFA went through some growing pains there in that period of when there was not an executive director there. But Carol come in, and boy, she has turned things around, and OFA has really grown. Which, I mean, I'm giving credit to her. I'm not saying that nobody else couldn't do it, but Carol, she was a godsend for OFA at that time, and OFA's a very strong organization in the state of Ohio now as far as organics goes and sustainable agriculture.
How have you seen the landscape of organic agriculture in Ohio change since you've been involved with OFA? Has it transformed a lot in those 20-something years?
Well, yeah, I mean, because when I got certified, my certification number is 303. So I was the 203rd grower that was certified.
203 or 303?
My number's 303, but the first number is 201. Oh. I mean, the first number started out as 101. Mm-hmm. and Rex Spray holds that. The Spray Farms holds 101.
So you were fairly early on.
So I was number 203. So I was very early on as one of the certified growers. And out of them 203, I mean I don't know where it would stand as far as a grain grower, because I'm sure in them early years a lot of them were vegetable growers, small vegetable growers. I don't know. I'm guessing, but yes, I was early on, and today, I mean, last year I think there was 700 and almost 800 farms that was certified organic by OFA in Ohio, and that's only OFA. I mean, you've got other certifiers certifying.
And these are new certifications, or these are total, some total.
OFA had around 800. Besides the other certifiers in Ohio, and I would have no clue. I mean, you got GOA, you got Moses. There's a certifier out of Florida that I know some of the dairies are certified. So I mean, there's several other certifiers that certify in Ohio, and I would have no idea. So I mean, the landscape of the number of acres and the number of producers, I mean, from the late 80s to now, has boomed.
What about public awareness about the connection between growing practices and health and environment? Have you seen that change since you've been doing this organically?
Well, just through the farmers market, I mean, you get a lot of questions by people that, they see your sign, they see your organic, and they want to know your practices, because a lot of people don't know what it means, and so I mean, there's awareness there. I mean, I mean, I haven't talked to people, but it's definitely, it's the public that has brought organic product into some of your mainstream grocery stores. I mean, if it wasn't for the public demanding it, I can't believe that some of your more mainstream grocers are gonna have it. So I mean, yeah, I think the public, I won't say all the public, but there's a sector of the public that wants to know where it comes from, where it's grown, and of course, one of the big things right now is it's maybe not so much organic but local, which is a big push. And of course, local organic's even better.
Now, what about for you personally? Do you believe that how you eat is really connected to your health?
Yes, I think that I personally feel that probably 90% of our health problems in this country is caused by what we eat.
How do you eat?
How do I probably don't eat as healthy as I should, but we try to eat as much organic. I mean, of course, we eat our own pork, and when we do buy beef or chicken, we try to, because we used to raise chicken, we don't anymore, but we try to buy locally, organically fed meat.
I wanted to ask you, could you just tell us a little bit about your acreage here and what you grow on the farm now? What do you produce? Like in terms of like the numbers.
Right. Well, we've got 6 sows farrow to finish, so we raise about 100 pigs a year, which, like I said, we direct market that through the 2 farmers markets, and
you sell that how, as broken down parts?
As cuts of meat,
okay.
Which that's what that sign was, and then we sell we sell halves and wholes, which most generally that's done through the winter months. I mean, we do markets in the winter, but we don't sell as much at the markets through the winter as we do through the summer. So we typically do the halves and wholes through the winter months.
In terms of the processed meats, sausage or the chorizo, is that stuff that you produce here on site, or you work with another?
It's done in order to retail meat or sell meat. It has to be done either at a state or USDA inspected facility. So yeah, I mean, yeah, I could if I wanted to put my own facility in, but that's not feasible. So our meat is done here locally in Fredericktown by a processor called DJ's, and he is a state inspected facility. Um, for a while, our meat was certified USDA. When we first started out, we actually paid for him to get certified. Rex Spray, which he had organic beef, which still does. Howard does. Rex is gone, but Rex and we paid that certification for him to get certified. Then, we did that probably for, I don't know, 4 years, 5 years. Then there finally got to be a few more people that was bringing animals in that was certified. So Mike started doing that, taking care of that himself then. And then I'm not real sure how, it's probably been 3 years now. Some of that livestock, some of it came in when USDA put the pasture rule in with the beef cattle. Some of the beef cattle dropped out of it. Anyways,
What was that? The pasture rule?
well, it has to do with the grass that they so much. Because it didn't affect me with the hogs.
Because you're feeding grain.
Right, pigs don't eat. I mean, they will eat grass, but they're not going to grow on grass. But a ruminant animal, sheep, cows, there was a pasture rule, and it's a big long calculation that a certain percent of their diet has to come from green grass, and it made it difficult for some guys because they didn't have enough pasture to get that. So, anyways,
To qualify as organic, it has to be a percentage pasture.
right.
Okay.
So he lost some of the people that was, so there wasn't as many, and he just didn't feel like it was worth the cost to him, so he dropped his certification. So when he dropped his certification, we had to drop the USDA label off of our meat. But
So your meat isn't technically certified, but the farm is.
correct. So, like I said, we've got 6 sows frail to finish, and we've just in the process of building a new barn, and don't ask me why I'm doing this, but we are going to go from 6 sows to 12 sows and possibly to 18 sows.
The demand is there.
Well, I don't know. Our goal is not to feed all these pigs out, but we're getting a lot of calls for people wanting to buy feeder pigs, which is a 40-pound pig, and they take it and raise it themselves. So
This is kind of home boutique sort of operation.
correct. They're looking for heritage bred pigs, which the pigs we raise are heritage breeds.
What kind do you raise?
They're old breeds. They won't do well in confinement.
Can you name
We
some of the
have
kinds?
our main one is Tamworths. We did have some purebred Berkshires. They have long went on to the great beyond, so to speak. I've got 2 sows that still they're probably half breed. I mean, they're half Berkshire and half Tamworths, and so that's the main. I just bought a Hereford boar, which is a
Well, that was a cow.
well, it's a cow, but there's a Hereford breed of pigs. It's a red pig with the white, like a Hereford cow, and that's how they got their name. Somebody did some breeding years ago, and anyways, there's a Hereford pig, and so I have a Hereford boar now, and but I'd like to get a couple purebred Berkshire sows back eventually, but anyways, so we are bumping our production up, but it's mainly more for feeder pigs than it is for finishing pigs. And then, of course, like I said, we feed them all organic grain, and our clientele, the fact that they're not certified, we've been doing this long enough and we asked when we lost our had to take our we didn't lose it, we had to take it off. We asked our clientele what that meant to them, because I was willing to find another processor that was certified, and there's some more in the state. They're a lot farther away. Which would mean a price increase too, because I'd have to compensate for that. But they said no, that as long as nothing changed, which Mike DJ's the processor does it. They didn't change anything other than they just dropped their certification. So we've stayed with him. So
Is that common for meat producers that they might feed all organic and have, when they grow the grain on site, have that certified and not necessarily have the meat certified, since you have to have the butcher certified too?
I'm sure that is. I mean, I don't know, because I don't know a lot of the meat producers, Um, Now, I know like Howard, which is Rex's nephew. I mean, they still have the beef. Now they get that certified, but they're selling that to Organic Valley. So, and Organic Valley is selling organic meat. So but those animals are being picked up and taken to organic, wherever Organic Valley has them processed, which, that would have to be a certified processor. But I mean, as far as I don't know of anybody selling certified organic meat. I mean, I'm not saying that. I'm sure it's out there, and but anyways, that's what we've done. I mean, our base, my regulars, we asked them, and that was not an issue. But however, we do keep. I mean, I wouldn't have to, but it's just I think I want to. I want to keep the farm certified. It's been certified since '86, so it'll be 30 years this year that it's. Is that right? 30? Yeah, 86. Yeah, 30 years. It'll be 30 years this year. So I mean, I hate to just drop it. I mean, even though I probably wouldn't need it for the fact that we don't sell it, but any grain. But if we'd ever have a real good year, I might have extra grain to sell, and I'd sure hate to have to sell organic grain on the conventional market when, certification is. I mean, a lot of people complain that that's a big cost, and maybe for a small vegetable grower, $900 a year might be, but to me, as a grain grower, and even though I'm not reaping anything right now from it. I mean, it is a selling point, because we can tell our, people that aren't regulars, they ask me if things are certified, and I tell them up front that the meat's not certified, but we do feed them certified organic grain, and I have my certificate right there that, that I can show that I do. I mean, now I don't have to, I don't go through no third party inspection like we did when they were certified, saying that, that they are. I mean, it's just that has to be a trust issue between you and the consumer. But I feel that, I have that trust, and I'll have a regular there buying at the market, and it's somebody new asking about it, and my regulars are not afraid to, they're not afraid to say, Dan, this is the best pork we ever had. And we hear that quite often from a lot of people. They say this tastes more like pork that I remember. And this is coming from, from people of the older generations, to say this tastes like what I remember pork tastes like growing up. So, which makes me feel good, which I contribute that more, not so much to the organics, but to the way I feed them, which I'm not going into that because that's my priority of.
What do you mean?
Because I don't feed them a normal diet, which most people feed hogs.
Do you want to talk about that? You said that's like your trade secret.
I feel that's why my pork tastes the way it is, because of the diet, which consists of what I do, and I'll leave it at that.
Okay.
I will leave it at that.
What does it mean to you to have spent your life doing this work?
What's it mean to me? Well, it gives me fulfillment. I mean, I can, you go out. When I go out, especially in the spring, and start tilling the earth, you get this fresh aroma. I've done farm tours before, and one of the things I do, and I don't steal it, I go and borrow a stalk of corn from my conventional neighbor that's no-till, high chemicals, anyways. And one of the things that I do is, like I said, I go and borrow a corn stalk from his field, and I will dig it up and have it, and I will dig one of mine up. And for people that know sustainable farming, organic farming. I mean, it's nothing new to them, but I mean, we've had farm tours here, and you've got people there that have no clue what's going on, and it just totally blows their mind to see that root system on that conventional corn, and the root system off of my organic corn, and that vast, huge ball of root system compared to that little dinky, which, I mean, that's because mine has to go out and find it. I mean, the nutrients are in the soil, but it has to find it, where the conventional, they're pouring it right in there, and that just stays right there. And you get in a dry year, and my corn, I'm not saying it won't get hurt. If it depends on how long the drought goes, but I can survive a drought a whole lot better than the conventional farmer. Now, in a wet year, it's just the opposite. I hate a wet year, which we've had 2 of them now. And here it is, the 29th of May, and we have no corn planted. But it's too wet. And it just, because I have my humus built up in my soil, my organic matter built up in my soil, it's like a sponge. And you can tell it when you walk on it. It's not hard. It don't crack like conventional soil. It's like I said, it's like a sponge. So when you do get wet, it stays wet longer because it absorbs. It's like what a sponge does when you put water into it. So in a wet year, I really think I get hurt because of that. But anyways, it's just it just gives me great pleasure to be able to see that I can grow a crop, and I can do it naturally. I don't have to have all these, harmful products. I mean, you take a handful of fertilizer and drop of chemical salt-based fertilizer and drop a fish worm in it, and you watch him curl up and die. But anyways, so that's one of the things that I get a great pleasure, and just I love working the land, which you'd asked me that as growing up as a kid, and I wouldn't have said that. I mean, it wasn't I didn't like living on the farm or none of that, but I just was not my life goal. But so anyways, like I said, the farm's certified. We have there's 90, there's 84, about 94 acres that is tillable. There's 84 of it broke up into 7 12-acre groups. It's on a 7-year rotation. There's 3 3-acre fields that's on a 3-year rotation. And so we have, 7 different it's not 7 different crops, because some of it, there's two fields that are but anyways, we have hay in the rotation. We have, or I should say, clover, and we don't make the hay. It's a rest year. We do corn, we have soybeans, and then we do small grains, which some small grains are interweaved in there. And of the small grains, we'll do winter barley, we'll do spring barley, we'll do spelt. Some years we'll do oats. We don't have any oats this year. Some years we do wheat, which we have wheat this year. A lot of years we don't. So it depends on the weather and how things are going, how we get things interwoved in there. But with that big set of diversification in there, it helps with pest control, it helps with weed control, it helps with whatever.
And even with the organic start, you still have to put inputs into the fields to get a crop at all, I'm assuming?
Up until this year, there's a couple fields that I am going to buy some organic fertilizer this year, which I have never done. But it's because with the way the weather's been, there's some bean fields that would have went to oats, and I'm afraid I'm not going to have enough nitrogen there for the corn. So I am buying some organic fertilizer to put on that corn ground that's going into beans. But normally, the only inputs I buy are my seed.
You're making a face when you talk about the fertilizer, so.
Well, I don't like spending money. I mean, because I know I can do it through my rotations, through my clover crops, and most generally I don't plant corn into a soybean crop. because now soybeans is a legume. Soybeans will produce nitrogen, but there's probably not enough nitrogen there to get a good corn crop. So I am going to supplement it with some organic fertilizer so that, that we do have a crop. But most generally, I mean, since I started in 1986, early on, I used to put the bacteria on that I talked about from AgriStore, which we would spray. That came in a liquid form. It was 36 different strains of bacteria, part of them being nitrogen fixation bacteria, part of them being decomposing bacteria, which in other words would break the organic matter, which would break your, like clover, corn stalks, whatever you're putting down. We did one time. We did try using some other organic fertilizer from a different company, and I feel that it was a waste of my money. I'm not going to say it didn't do any good, but it didn't boost my yield any.
Do you do other soil inputs like lime or?
No, since I've done that, I have not. All I've done is my rotations. I try to follow. For my corn, I always try to follow corn into a clover, and if I've got a good clover crop, I've got enough nitrogen. And of course, then other people say, yeah, but you got all them pigs and you're putting all that manure on them. Well, this year out of 15 acres of corn, there was about 3 acres that I had enough manure to cover 3 acres. So the manure is not. I mean, yeah, it's beneficial, but I don't have enough to cover all of it. So
you move the manure. The pigs aren't on pasture.
No. I have too many. The question was, do I have my pigs on pasture? And of course, a lot of people want pastured pork. They hear of pastured pork. A pig will not grow on grass. They will eat grass, but they will not grow on grass. A pig is not a ruminant. A pig is a grain eater. So I have too many, because since we sell at the farmers markets, we need product year round. So we have our young. We try to have little pigs every 8 weeks, so we have a constant supply. So most generally, I have 4 different groups of pigs, 4 different sizes. So for me to have 4 different groups of pigs out on pasture, it would be a total management nightmare. Not only that, since there would be 4 different groups, I would have to take all my land and break it up into paddocks, and it would be a management nightmare, and it would be a mud quagmire, which I feel would be more unsanitary for them than the way we do them. We finish them in an open front building that has open to the east, and it has plenty of fresh air and plenty of sunlight coming in. And because of the diet that I feed, which is not a normal corn soybean diet,
I'm so curious what you feed them.
I will tell you off of the record.
Oh,
but
is it sprinkles?
No, but anyways, so, and it's because of that diet that I feed them. It does take me longer to finish a pig out than a normal pig. I mean, a conventional, even a soybean corn diet, it takes me a little longer to feed them out.
What's it like working with pigs for you personally?
What's it like?
Yeah. Why do you work with pigs?
Well, it's because I grew up with them. My dad raised pigs. I grew up with them. I took pigs in 4-H, and I guess that's why I like them. That's what I grew up with.
What are they like as animals?
What are they like? They're stupid. Everybody says pigs are smart, but I ain't seen a smart one yet.
How come?
Well, you tell me this. If you were getting fed and you had your feed put on a plate in front of you and you upset and knocked it off in the mud, would you call that smart? No, I don't. They will flip their pans every time. And when you want them to go one way, they go the other way.
Maybe they're super smart.
Well,
Maybe
I don't know. I don't know. But that's just, I mean, people say pigs are smart, but I tell people I ain't seen a smart one yet. But no, they're just, it's like any, if I'd have been grew up on a beef farm, I'd probably have beef. And had my father not got drafted into the service, I would probably be milking cows today, because that's what he was doing on his father's, would have been my grandfather's farm. They milked cows, and like I said, had he not got drafted, I would probably be milking cows today. Which, boy, I'm glad I'm not milking cows.
Does it mean something to you to be carrying on this tradition that was something that your father and grandfather also did in a way?
Yes, it does. I mean, the sad part of it, when I'm gone, this will be gone. We do have a son. I mean, at one point we thought he might be interested in it, and I didn't push it on him. I mean, he showed some interest, and then, you know, a different aspect in his life transpired, and he went another direction, which is fine. I'm happily with where he's at today, and what he does, but and that's the only sad thing I have with this farm, is when I'm done with it, what's going to happen to it.
What do you want to have happen?
Well, I would like to be able to see someone come in and it stays the way it is. But with the price of land it is, you know, this farm's probably worth $750,000, and I don't see how a young person can come in and buy it and make a go of it, even in organics. To have to spend, you know, $750,000 just to acquire, you know, just acquire the land.
Do you have a plan for what will?
No, I don't, and that's why I said that's the sad thing. And actually, that we thought that was, and you can cut this off.
Do you want me to pause it?
Yes.
Okay. Tell me when I can turn it back on. I'm gonna pause it for now. All right, we're back on.
So.
Because you can put some sort of easement on it so that folks have to keep it in farmland, but right? Is there some sort of like
You could do an
conservancy, or
there is something that can be done like that. The thing with this farm is, it would be hard for it to be sold and broke into to a housing development. And the reason for that is there is only an acre of frontage that's in the far northwest corner of the farm that has any road frontage at all. The rest of the farm sits back off of the land.
So it's kind of protected in a way.
It's protected in itself, because that is the only access there is to the farm, and it's, like I said, it's in the far northwest corner. The rest of it, we actually only have when you came in, the first part of the lane, we only have a right of way in here. So in that respect, it's going to stay probably a farm forever. The only way it could be done, and man, it would be cost, because like I said, it's in the far northwest corner of the farm. To come in and put a road in, it would be very expensive to put a road in and bring it in to break it up. So, and speaking, you know, and as far as that goes, I know at the conference this year, and we've talked about it as a board. I mean, you know, what can OFA do? What can OFA do to help the next generation? Actually, it ain't the next generation to me, but it's a couple generations down. What can OFA do to help bring young farmers in? So, you know, there is talk about that, and I know that at the conference this year, it was the night prior to the beginning. They had I'm going to call it a workshop, a gathering of people that I guess I didn't get to it, but sat down and talked about things like this, of trying to connect, figuring out ways that, you know, we can connect the younger generation maybe to the older generation, and how to take, because it is a real concern of mine, because I mean, I've got a neighbor that would buy it in a minute, and he surrounds me on three sides of the farm that he's not organic, he's conventional, and you know, he's already approached me that he wants it when I'm done with it, and it is a real concern of mine, and I have it really bothers me. because I hate to see 30 years of what I've done be lost in 10 minutes, because that's basically in one day. He would come in here and he would plant this farm in one day, and the work that I've done in 30 years would be gone. Sorry. But anyways, it is a real concern to me of what will happen to it. But
Are there ways that young people can train with you? Have you ever brought young people in or had apprentices or interns?
I've never have, and there again it goes back to the price of land and what it's going to cost them to buy this place.
I know some people like Lindsay Lesher-Shute, who spoke at the conference. I think a lot of times she was saying people will even kind of do a work trade and come and live on a farm for someone who's older and kind of learn the trade, and then maybe can part buy them out
Right.
and do these other arrangements.
And it's and there may be something that as I get closer we may have to look into to maybe something like that someone could and it may be something that could someone come in and maybe I could rent it to them or something. I don't know. I'm sure there's all kinds of possibilities, and I mean I was thinking real serious about that when I was thinking about that maybe our time here was becoming short range, but now that it's too early in the process to think of that at this point.
But it matters for you that someone keeps this in organics.
If at all possible, it can. But when my time comes that I can no longer do it, I mean, I don't know how to say this, and not be, if it means that I have to sell it to a conventional farmer to get rid of it in order for me to move on, I'll have to do it. It'll make me cringe to do it, but I'll just have to do what I have to do. But hopefully but who knows what's going to happen.
What do you think what are some of the greatest challenges you face right now in this phase of your farming career? It's knowing that I'm at the point in my life where you're not coming into the tunnel and got a lot of years to go. I'm at the end of that tunnel and I'm coming out of it, and it's I can see it's going to be time to start phasing out of it, which goes back to what we were just talking about, the fact of what's going to happen to this farm when I can no longer do it. And I know that the end of that time is a whole lot closer now than what it was 30 years ago when I started into this. It seems like that's a challenge for young people starting too, is just accessing the land. So
And it is a challenge. And when I bought this farm, well, it's more than 30 years now. I mean, I bought it in 1979, which when I bought it, what I paid for it then, I thought was, ridiculous price, which now, had I known it, I should have bought all the land I could have for that price. But, and when I bought this farm, I mean, it was the late 70s. It was the farm crisis. Interest rates was 18%. And, a lot of, I won't say a lot, there was people that was my age, then in their 20s, that bought land, bought farms that, they're no longer farming today because of, high interest rates, the farm crisis, and, they couldn't withstand it. Fortunately, I was able to, probably what helped me to withstand it was I had an off-farm job.
I was just going to ask you about that. Could you have done any of this without that job?
Probably not. Because when I took that job, my goal was to quit in 5 years and farm full time. Well, it's 43 years later, and I'm still working and still, of course, I'm at the point now where, and it became to the point where you couldn't actually, because my retirement, was invested where I was working, and you couldn't hardly give that up. So I mean, it's a lot of things, but. In the late 70s in the farm crisis, it was a difficult time for farmers, with high interest rates and fortunate, the the couple that I bought this farm from, they had nobody that wanted to. I mean, they had a daughter, but she had no interest in taking the farm over, and he kind of looked at me as a son. I mean, and I kind of looked at him as a father, and he was a father figure for me after my father died, because I lost my father at a young age. And I mean, he kept, because the house that you came in by, he kept the front. That's how we ended up with just the right of way. He kept that and built that house, and I mean, it was probably 10 years. I mean, he would come back here. I mean, he was like a father for me. I mean, and he wanted me to have this farm, because he could have actually sold this farm for twice of what he sold it to me for. And it was to the neighbor that I was just saying, it's his son that would like to buy it now, but his father wanted it, and he offered him twice of what I bought it for, but Glenn wanted me to have it. And fortunate enough, it's all ours now. It's so.
I have to ask you, you picked a life where you were full time at the off-farm job?
Mm-hmm.
So you picked a life where for the last 30-something years you've had 2 full-time jobs, 2 more than full-time jobs.
Correct.
Why? What keeps you doing that?
Well, it all goes back to that fall that my father had his stroke, and I was given that responsibility. And why I have no answer. I don't know why, but for some reason after I had that responsibility of getting them crops off, because I didn't help put them in, but I had that responsibility of getting them crops off. That I don't know. There's a saying, you can take the boy off of the farm, but you can't take the farm out of the boy, and there must be something to that, because it's ingrained in me, and I just love. And you said that I have a full-time job off the farm. I have the farm that I had 2 full-time jobs. Well, if you back up prior to 2009, you can add something else in there, and you can make it 3 full-time jobs, because I ran a feed business out of here, and we were grinding organic feed and selling organic feed to organic, mainly poultry producers. And there was a lot of nights spent in this building grinding feed to way late at night.
Well, tell me that story. That didn't even come up at all. So what was that business called, and where did that
Well,
come
it was still, it fell under the organic curly tail organic farm, but we did an organic feed business, and at the peak, we probably were doing between 200 and 250 ton of organic chicken feed that was being sold to to people that was producing organic chicken and people that just wanted organic chicken feed.
Why did you go into that?
Why did I go into that? That's a story in itself.
Please tell.
It goes back to an OFA conference. Mr. Mike Laughlin, which he's one of the early pioneers of OFA also.
I'll be talking with him this Wednesday, I think, out in Johnstown.
Yeah. He approached me at an OFA conference and says, I hear you got you've got a bean extruder. I says, yes.
What's that?
Well, for livestock to be able to utilize the soybean, the protein out of the soybean, they have 2 enzymes in them, and I can't tell you the name of them. They're big long names.
It's okay.
But there's 2 enzymes, they're protein enzymes, that they have to be broke down through a heat process. So I have, and when we was approached about the organic pork, we started it. I bought this soybean extruder, but through a friction process, it builds the heat of the soybeans, and it brings them up to 300 degrees, and then you can use it as a protein source for animals. So anyways, Mike sought me out because someone had told him I had this, because he was raising a few chickens, and he was buying soybeans, I think, from Rex, and he was roasting them on a cookie tray in his oven.
got to take a long time, right?
Right. So he approached me about buying some organic extruded soybeans, and I asked him what he wanted it for, and he told me that what he was doing, that he was roasting these beans on a cookie tray in the oven, and then he was taking that and the corn that he was buying from Rex, and he was grinding that in a coffee grinder to make his own feed so he could have organic chicken feed.
For like one chicken.
Well, I don't know how many chickens he had at that time. But anyways, it was consuming a lot of his time. So I told Mike, I says, I'll tell you what, I says, you come up and I'll if you want, we can just grind you some chicken feed. So that's how it all started, and I don't remember what year it was, but it's been a few years ago. And from that, it happened by the word of mouth, because someone asked Mike how he was doing it, and he told him what he was doing, and then he told him what happened, and then I started getting phone calls, and so it just, through the word of mouth, it became a very lucrative business, which was very time consuming because I wasn't set up as a feed mill. We were doing it through a portable grinder mixer, but anyways.
So you shut it down after a while.
Well, so we was in 2009. We was at the peak. I mean, we was probably up to 250 ton. And I had an accident. I fell and I broke the whole head of my femur bone off. So something had to go by the way, because our son was still living in Ohio at that time, but he had what he was doing, and we had the pigs and everything, and my wife's, and I, even before she said it, I said, we've got to shut the feed business down because there's no way that you and Brandon can take care of that and take care of the pigs, and so we basically said that we was done with it. She called people and told them that they weren't, that we wouldn't do it. It did end up somebody else tried to come in and tried to take it over and tried to do it. It lasted about 6 months, and it just wasn't working out, so it went by the wayside. We still do it a little bit for some of our old customers, but it just, after my leg healed, I tried doing it, and I just couldn't take all that lifting of them bags because I've got metal and screws in my leg. So you can talk about 2 full-time jobs, but there was actually 3 full-time jobs in there.
How did the farm business, how has it impacted your job in town over the years?
How's it?
Has your life as a farmer impacted who you are in your other job?
No, not really.
What's day-to-day life like at your other job?
What is it like?
Mm-hmm. You work like a 9 to 5?
I got to be at work at 6 o'clock, and I get off at 2:30. It's a factory job. I'm working on an assembly line. I put pumps together. It's a job. It's a factory job. I mean, is there fulfillment in it? Nah, not really. I mean, it's a paycheck. I mean, I'm grateful for my job, but I mean, it's probably why I'm still on the farm, but I mean, it's a factory job. Would I recommend people doing it? If you want a factory job, if you want to make you're not going to get rich off of it. I mean, I make good money, but do I get fulfillment out of it? No. My fulfillment one is when I get home.
Would you recommend people do this? Curly tail?
If they had a passion for it, yeah. But you're going to need a passion. If you ask me, would I recommend you go buy a farm and take it over? I don't know what I'd tell you.
If I had the money.
Well, even if you had the money, would I tell you to go buy a farm and do it? you'd really have to have it in your heart to do it. Don't I mean I wouldn't want somebody just to do it because they think they want to do it, because it's a lot of hard work. And there's times you wonder, is all this time that I'm putting into it, is it worth it? And there's times I even think about it. I get home here at 3 o'clock, and I mean it's not so much now. I try to be in the house by 7 o'clock in the evenings now, just because it's mainly because my leg hurts from the accident. But I mean, before that, when we had to feed, I mean, there was lots of nights. It was midnight till we'd go till I'd get to the house, just because he had things to do. And at that time, the farms, the crops suffered a lot more, because I had to take care of my feed customers. I mean, you get a call saying, "Hey, I need a ton of feed." I'll get it for you next week. Well, they can't wait till next week to get a ton of feed because they need it. So I mean, there was times that I had to leave things that I need, cultivate needed done. Well, you had to let it go, and so I really had myself stretched pretty thin. But it was doing a service and helping other people out, and we made it through it. And you know, do I want to take the feed business back up? No, I have no desire to.
What do you think beginning farmers need to know about the earlier days of organics in Ohio? The battles you had to fight and the victories you all won. What do you think they need to know about that history?
Well, I don't know that it's a big thing, but back when I started, there just wasn't a lot out there to look to. I mean, you couldn't look to your neighbor, that was for sure. Now, yeah, fortunately, I had a neighbor that was doing it, that lives the next road across, that helped me. I mean, Stanley helped me a lot, but if it hadn't been for him, there wasn't nobody around. Now, there at that time there was about 3 or 4 of us in the neighborhood that did go that way. So I mean, Stanley was very instrumental in helping all of us. But I mean, we was kind of lucky there. I mean, I with being involved with OFA, especially being involved with OCIA, because I mean, when I was certified through them, of course, I was the president of our. I mean, after that first year, I mean, we didn't go into that much detail about that. I mean, I talked a little bit about how Rex and Jim put this core group of us guys together, and there was 4 of us that took the leadership over, and I kind of left it at that. But that was the first year. The second year, actually, I guess the second year there was this. I stayed on as vice president, and there was somebody else took over as presidency, and then in '98, I took over as the president, and I was president of the chapter for I don't know how long, probably 6-7 years. So I got quite involved with OCI there because they had. I mean, we had They have an annual membership meeting where, of course, before pre-NLP days, they had their rules for guidelines for certification, and that was all voted on by the membership at the annual meeting. And so, as president, I was usually the one that went to the annual meeting, and they were held all over. Sometimes they were Lincoln. I mean, through that, I got to do some traveling. I've been to Canada, Saskatchewan, Moose Jaw. The annual meeting was there one year. I've been to, of course, Lincoln several times. I've been to Mexico twice. The AGM was in Oaxaca one year. It was in Oaxaca another year. I've been to Costa Rica one year. It was the AGM was in San Jose. And the reason it was in these other countries is OCI was called the Organic Crop Improvement Association. It was an international organization, and it consisted of chapters like our chapter here, the original chapter, and then when it broke up, there was chapter 1 and chapter 2 here in Ohio. I mean, there's other states. Some states had as many as 4 chapters in a state. Some, like Montana, I think they had 4 chapters. Sounds like thunder. There was chapters in Canada and in the different provinces, in Alberta and Saskatchewan. There's chapters in Mexico, chapters in Costa Rica. It was an international organization, and so they would ask chapters to host the annual meeting, and so that's how them annual meetings got into the other countries. So by that I got to do some traveling for the AGM, and of course I've met farmers from all over the world through being involved with OCI. I mean, I've got a real good friend that's a coffee grower in Peru. Never been there, but Juan's quite a guy. I mean, he's a coffee grower, and but anyways, there's a lot of different experiences there that, but for a young, they need a passion for it, and would I tell them to go into it? It's a good life, but yet it's a hard life. So, don't be sure you know what you want before you jump into it, because, it could be an expensive mistake. But it's been a good life, and I get a lot of fulfillment from it, because you see that crop, you put that seed in the ground, and it just, a lot of that reflects back to the life that, as a kid growing up, the teachings that my mother gave me, the Christian background that I grew up with, and especially with what Christ did for us. He went to the cross, he died, he went into the ground. I mean, the planting season is somewhat a resemblance of that. You put that seed in the ground, that seed dies, and then it brings new life, which, that new life just alliterates me, because I know I have that new life.
Can you tell me too about this place? Because I know you grew up not too far from here, right?
Yes, I grew up half a mile west of here. Actually, I don't know, you can probably see the place from here.
What does it mean to you to still be working a piece of property so close to where you came from? Do you have a deep connection to this particular farm?
Not really. I mean, yeah, I was fortunate, like I said, when I started farming with my dad. I still lived at home. I wasn't married at that time, and I said that we was up to 600 acres, which he owned 63 acres. The rest of that was all either rented ground or sharecropped on a 50-50 basis. Either a 50-50 basis, or we did it 1/3, 2/3. The owner got 1/3 of the crop, and we paid for it all. We paid for putting all the crop in, and we got 2/3. Or it was the owner paid for half of it, he got half the crop, and we got half of the crop for doing the work. So, when we was at that 600 acres, we had this farm where I live at now, and then we had, there was 1, 2, 3, we had 6 other farms that we farmed. Some of them, a couple of them were over 100 acres, some of them were, but anyways, it consisted of 600 acres. So, and I forget where we were going now.
Oh, I was just asking you about
about the connection.
The place. Are you connected to this particular place since you've worked the land for so long?
Well, I consider this my home now, but I don't. And like I said, I hate to see what's going to happen to it when I can no longer do it. But am I going to lose sleep over it? No, I'm not going to lose sleep, because I know that life goes on, and there comes another time and phase of your life of where you got to move on. So and it was like the farm that I grew up on. It's not. Let me put it this way: it's not a. It doesn't go back in the family, so I don't feel that I need to keep it in the family because I'm the first generation on this farm. Uh, the farm I grew up on, that wasn't the family farm. I mean, that was wasn't the farm that my father or my my father bought that farm. And I had after my father passed away, my mother lived at the farm for I don't know several years, and when it came to the point where it was she could no longer take care of the yard, take care of the upkeep of the buildings. Yes, I was farming the farm. I mean, and she offered it to me to buy it, which I would have loved to have had it, but it was, shortly after I'd bought this farm, and there would have been no way I could have. If I would have bought that, I would have probably ended up losing both of them. So, and the fact that it wasn't a family farm, it wasn't in the family in generations prior. There was no lost feelings or like I needed to keep that in the family name. Now, had my father been able to got his father's farm, and then I would have moved on to that, it might have been I might have different feelings, but that didn't happen, and so and I know and like the man that I said that helped me get started, Stanley Gray. There's some rich heritage there in a family farm, and I mean it was his father's prior to him, and I think it even goes back farther than that, and his son has now taken it over, and it's so there's generational heritage there to keep that, but as far as this here, there's I don't have any.
I wanted to ask you, because I don't think we got to talk about it earlier, and then we can walk around for a little bit, because I've been keeping you yakking for a while, but can you talk to me about the environmental impact of your practices? Do you think a lot, are you concerned about environment?
Well, yeah, I mean,
I didn't know, because you didn't mention that as one of the reasons to go into organic. It was more the labor difference and the cost difference and the health difference. But I just
well,
was curious if
right.
environment.
Well, in the I mean, yeah, I mean, there's no doubt about it. I mean, all the, I mean, and that was one of the other things that, I mean, as being a conventional farmer prior to this, and it was actually me who took my father somewhat away from low input to higher inputs as I came into the picture. I said, hey, we need to. We started, broadcasting fertilizer, on ahead, and so I took it. I actually took it to a higher input system, and of course, then that my dad seen that ease in that, maybe not ease, but it was somewhat of an ease because we still tried to cultivate some, but not near like when I was a kid growing up. And we could do more acreage because we didn't have as much labor in it. But then when I seen, man, we're heading the wrong direction. We need to go back more to where he was. Well, and of course, he was getting later in his life. Well, he didn't want to do that. So, but and I could, I seen that we was having to use stronger chemicals because the chemicals we were using wasn't working, and it was that progression. It was just, you could see it was going in the wrong direction. Of course, you go ask a conventional farmer, they're not going to say that because they don't see that in their mindset. They don't, because, and and this is something that the whole sustainable organic farming. And you asked earlier about me buying inputs, and I'm not a believer of buying inputs. I'm not saying that you can't do it, and that they're not a helpful. They can be a tool if you need them, but the whole thing of it's a mindset. I mean, you got to work. You got to work with nature. You got to work with the soil. I mean, it's a whole system. You can't do this and expect this, because you need to do this, and this in an ecological, sustainable, to obtain this. And so if you do this part and you leave this part and this part out, and you do this part, it ain't gonna work. You got to do them all. And if you don't have that, and I've known guys that have tried to, that are conventional, and a prime example is the neighbor that I talked about that would love to buy this farm. When he started farming with his dad, he tried to do organic farming on a farm that he was renting, because the person that he was renting it from wanted that farm to go that way, but he had it in it that he could buy all of his inputs and made it work. And he failed. And the reason he failed, because he just tried to do this one thing, and it's a whole it's a system that you have to follow. And if you don't follow the system, you're not going to get the result that you need by shortchanging it, and you can't shortchange that system. And I think that's one thing that a young person, or not necessarily a young person, anybody coming into organics, if they can't get that mindset that it's a system, that it's a plan, then they're going to fall flat on their face. Because if they only try to do one thing, it ain't going to work. It will never work. And you can't shortchange it. And if you don't have that you got to have that commitment that you want to do it, or it's not going to work, because you will. If you don't have that commitment, you are going to shortchange it. And go, I can skip this and do this, and then skip that and do this and do this, and I'll be all right. But when they get there, they're not all right.
What are some of the lessons that farming in this way, organically and with this system, have taught you as a person?
Well, one thing is you got to be patient, and early on that was really hard. Now, this year it ain't, because I'm going to be planting right when my conventional neighbors are planting. But had in a normal year, my neighbors, the conventional farmer, is usually done before I even think about starting. Because, and seems like it keeps getting earlier all the time. I mean, if they had it their way, they would have been done planting by the end of April. I mean, of course, around here with all the rain, and they're just, a lot of them are just now planting now. But and that was hard. I mean, because it was hard to be, and actually, from being farming conventionally myself, knowing that this is when we planted and all this, it was hard to hold back them early years, saying, oh man, I need to be out there planting the corn, and no, you don't want to be out there planting that corn, because if you do, you're gonna have all these weeds coming that you don't want coming, that you should be out there getting rid of, and with delayed planting. I mean, that's here again, it's not happening this year, because I haven't had no chance to. We're going to be trying to kill them all at once, and who knows what it's going to be like. But that's the challenge of it. But that was one of the big hurdles to get over in my early years, was because coming from conventional to organic, I was used to doing these practices, and you still had that mindset that these practices are there, and you go, oh man, I need to be out here doing this, and no, it's you don't want to jump the gun. And there was a friend of mine. We both started this about the same time, and I know there was times that he jumped the gun and he paid for it too. But
so you kind of have to go against your own tradition that you were raised with.
Right. Which if it's somebody that's never farmed coming into it, that part wouldn't be the hurdle, as with me having farmed conventionally for several years, transitioning over into it.
Is there anything you haven't gotten to talk about that you'd like to share? Parts of your story that just haven't come up yet?
Well, there is one other thing that I mentioned with being involved with OCIA. I got to do some traveling, to other countries. Uh, and actually, with doing the farmers markets, I got to know a group of people from the Cleveland area, which they were consumers, and they bought product from us. But through that, we got to have a pretty good relationship. Not only through them, because we actually through them we was able to sell in some restaurants at one time. We no longer do that, but out of that, there's the slow food movement, and there's a convivium or a chapter of slow food in the Cleveland area. And through that group of the leadership of that, I'm not going to remember the one lady's name, but Carrie Moore was the one lady, and there was another lady that was really involved with it, and I can't even think of her name now. But when Slow Food did their first gathering, they had an international gathering
In Terra Madre?
of Terra Madre. I was fortunate enough to be nominated by the Cleveland Convivium, and I got to be one of the delegates of that 2004 Terra Madre, which was the very first one in Turin, Italy, and got to go to it. And then 2 years later, they nominated me again as a delegate for the 2006. So I've been to Terra Madre twice, and those were both good times. Getting to meet more farmers from the first year there was 5,000 farmers there from all over the world. Getting to meet them, of course, a lot of them you couldn't talk to, but we all had a common goal, and that was food, and producing food in a sustainable, healthy, and so that was another experience that I had we not done this, I would have never got to experience. But
It's interesting because you've talked about the OFA network, and then is it OCIA?
OCIA.
And then Slow Food, kind of from a statewide network to kind of a bigger North American network to this international network. So why has it been important to you to connect with farmers beyond Ohio? Even if they're doing something totally different or speaking a different language, why is that important?
Well, it's we're all trying to do this, to promote a healthy, sustainable food for everybody. I mean, of course, being involved with OCIA, I mean, of course, that most of those farmers I was you could really communicate with, because they're more on your level. Of course, Juan, the coffee grower from Peru, I mean, we had a language barrier there. He could speak a little bit of broken English, but you normally had to do it through an interpreter. But I mean, I actually served on OCI's on the international board of directors for 3 years too. So that's how I got to know Juan real well, because he was on the board. I mean, he ran for the board, and he was from Peru. So I mean, it's been a good experience. I mean, I've got to meet a lot of different people, trying to do the same thing that I have done. We've shared experiences, both, good experiences, bad experiences, and you learn and you grow from them. Things that they've done that helped you, and things that you've done has helped them, and things that you've failed at that. So it's all intertwined, that we're all out here to help each other. And yeah, I did mention that I don't want to tell you what I feed these pigs, but I probably should, but
No, it's up to you. You can do whatever you want.
But no, I mean, it's just anyways.
We can loop back to it when it's off. So.
But we're all out there, and if someone wants to know about raising pigs, I'll help them with. I'm not afraid. No, I won't give them my exact feed recipe, but I will help them, and I'll tell them what I use, but to get down to the to the specifics of it, that's kind of prioritorial to me. It's just because I've got this quality product that that I don't want anybody till I'm done and coming into the farmers market and taking over my business. But
No, I want to ask you just a couple closing questions, then we can walk around. I want to ask you, what is your vision for the future of organic food and farming in Ohio? What would you like to see happen?
well, the big goal, the goal that probably would never happen, was I'd like to see every farm in Ohio. I mean, 100% of the acreage in Ohio to be under organic production, because I know. I mean, I can't prove it, but I know that is the problem of not only of the world, of our health issues. It's from what we eat, and if we don't have mineralized, chemical free, of all these chemicals that we're using, free food, we're going to have these health issues. And yeah, I mean, granted, you go back, there's always been health problems, and there's always going to be health problems. But I don't think we'll have the health problems that we have today, with obesity, with diabetes, and when you eat something that's not nutrition, I mean, I don't know how to put it in words, but when you're putting stuff on crops, feeding livestock stuff that is poison, I mean, what can we expect as consumers, as a group of people? What can we expect out of it but to have issues? I mean, when you got to eat so much, because there's nothing there to gain from it. But yeah, I mean, that would be my number one goal. Will it ever happen? Probably not. I mean, it's not saying that it couldn't at some point in life. That it might happen. It might happen because it has to happen. But that would be my number one goal. But in a more realistic way, is I hope that OFA positions itself where it is known to the public, it is known to the consumers, it's known to whoever that they are an organization that stands on producing not necessarily certified organic food, but sustainable, local chemical-free food. And a lot of certified organic people don't like you hear you saying that, because all they think is of the O word. But I don't think of the O word as in that way, because I think there's a lot of people producing food chemical free that don't want to deal with certification. That OFA's there for them too, but that OFA it stays in a position where they are looked to as an organization with respect, that have clout, that people don't think they're some all far off group that are a bunch of loonies that don't have no idea what they're doing, because they're not. I mean, yeah, early on the organic movement was thought of that as the long-haired hippie tree huggers, but it's not. But I hope that OFA, and I hope that my time that I have spent on the board, that I have spent promoting OFA, has helped take OFA in that step, and not only OFA but the whole organic movement, the sustainable food, the local food movement, that I have had a part, and I feel that I have, and I feel good about that, and that I continue to do that, even after say I'm not even engaged in the producing of food, that I'm still able to do that. That I mean, that's one of my goals.
Are you hopeful for the future of sustainable food in Ohio?
Oh yeah, yeah. There's no. I mean, it's a growing. It's a growing. I don't want to say fad, but it's a growing. People want to know. Consumers want to know where their food's coming from. Uh, eh, Now the organic people have to be careful that they don't overprice themselves, where it's to the point where most people can't afford it, because some of it is. Uh, I mean, I don't think that's a goal. I mean, a road that it should go down. It needs to be, it needs to be able to be available to all people. And I realize if you look at my prices, I mean, and I hear it all the time that people say that my prices are reasonable. And I don't try to price it to the point where it's only people that have money that can get it, because I don't want it to be that way. I mean, I need to make a profit, but I don't need to make a killing. So no, I think that it has a great future, and hopefully that as the younger generation moves in, that there is a place for them to come in, and there again, that's a place where OFA, there's an opportunity for them to position themselves to be able to help some way.
Thank you so much. Is there anything you'd like to add? Has it come up?
Not that I know of.
We've touched upon all facets of your life and work.
I hope that's what you wanted.
No, that's great. If there's anything else, you can speak now, or
No.
we can always do a part two. But thank you so much, and we'll go on a walking tour in a minute. But once again, we're here talking with Ed Snavely at Curly Tail Organic Farm.
Mm-hmm.
That's the right name?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And we're here in Knox County. It is Sunday, May 29th, 2016. I'm Jess Lamar Reece Holler with the OFA Food, Farm, and Movement Memory Project. Thanks so much for talking with us, Ed.
Not a problem.
And thank you all for listening.